Good afternoon. Welcome to the weekly livestock market update. I'm Brownfield anchor reporter Megan Grebner. With us, as always, to talk all things markets is University of Missouri Scott Brown. Good afternoon, Scott.
Good afternoon, Megan.
It's going to be a quick chat for us today. Not too much going on. Actually, not any reports this week, or no reports this week. So we carried over a couple of consumer side of things and consumer conversations for this week. We'll get to those in just a second. But to kick things off, let's recap what happened this week in the markets.
Yeah, starting on the cattle side this week, live fed cattle were about $2.90 higher this week. Those feeder cattle markets were also higher, anywhere from $3 to $6 higher this week. On the future side, the August live cattle futures contract was up about $1.75 on the week, while the August feeder cattle contract was up $4.20. That stronger feeder cattle futures contract was driven in part, at least, by what was a near 30-cent decline in the July corn futures that we saw this week. On the beef side, box beef prices were $8.20 lower this week. On the hog side, cash barrel and gilt prices were $2.60 lower this week. Futures markets on the hog side, it's been a tough week for them. July lean hog futures contract was down nearly $10.75 on the week. The pork cutout value also lost, down $9.30 on what was really weakness across the board in all those pork components.
It's definitely been interesting to see what's been going on the grain side of things this week. They've sure taken a step back, and then also to see hog prices start to pull back a little bit as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Megan. I think this should remind us that be prepared for more volatility as we look ahead. I think those that think we have plenty of moisture won this week on the crop side, pushing a lot of those corn and soybean futures contracts much lower. But who knows, next week could be another dry, hot week and change things a lot. So I still expect we're in for a lot of volatility as we look ahead.
And plenty for us to keep track of as the summer weeks go by. Let's talk livestock slaughter as we get into those weekly numbers. And both cattle and hogs have pulled back a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. If we look at cattle slaughter for the week ending June 19th, it's going to come in at 663,000 head. That's 2,000 below a week ago, although 17,000 above where we were a year ago. Year to date, we're now talking about slaughter that's 5.6% above year ago levels. So we're slowly creeping back towards 2020 levels on the cattle side. Hog slaughter this week, 2.443 million head of hogs to be slaughtered. That's 3,000 above a week ago, but 150,000 below where we were a year ago. When we look at the hog side year to date, 1.4%, it just tells you we're tightening up on the hog supply side of this situation as year to date slaughter comes closer to where we were in 2020.
Retail prices, as we take a look at those, interesting to start and to continue our comparisons from where we are now to where we were a year ago during the pandemic shutdown and slowdown.
Yeah, so when we look at the May data that we got out last week, beef retail prices neared $7 in that May data. It's now every consecutive month of 2021 has been higher retail beef prices. Yet, when you look back at where we were in May of 2020, we were setting about $7.60 a pound. So we're still 60 cents below where we were back in the record highs. But again, higher prices as we continue to march here in 2021. On the hog side, we've also seen higher retail pork prices every month of 2021. We're sitting with the May data at about $4.40 a pound. A little different story relative to where we were in beef, because you look back at a year ago levels and we were at $4.05 a pound back in May of 2020, so about 35 cents lower on pork retail prices in 2020 relative to where we sit today.
When we take a look at those and we see what's been going on the retail side of things, how much are we watching economic recovery, consumer sentiment, which we'll talk about in just a minute, but also folks wanting to spend more, wanting to be outside, wanting to do those things and have that experience as well again?
Yeah, so maybe I'm too early in talking about this point, but I think it's a good one. So we've had, as food service has opened, kind of as we've get to the tail end, hopefully, of COVID-19, I think there's been a big slug of demand pull that's gone on with that food service pull. When you look at what happened to the pork cutout value this week, and belly prices were considerably lower this week, you kind of wonder if maybe we're seeing food service channels beginning to catch up from their slowdown, shutdown that they experienced during much of 2020. So I think that's one thing to watch. Now, to your points, I think we still have folks who want to get out and about. I think when you just look in your own situation, you're finding bigger numbers of folks out, engaged, wanting to eat. All those things I think are helpful for us. I do worry that we're seeing some inflation. What's that mean for food expenditures? I think too early to tell. And then I guess the last piece of that is what happens to consumer income here for the remainder of 2021? What happens if it slows enough that there's less money in the pocket for things like beef and pork? And what's that mean when we're talking about relatively high retail prices for these products?
It definitely is part of that conversation that we continue to have. Consumer sentiment, a nice uptick this month.
Yeah, that's right. You look at what we got for the June consumer sentiment data. It was 4.2% above where we were in May. I look at that, and it was driven in large part by what was happening in terms of the index of consumer expectation, which was 6.3% above where we were in May just a month ago. Now you look at those year-over-year numbers, index of consumer sentiment up 10.6%, the index of consumer expectations up nearly 16%. It just tells you that consumers are in a much better place than where we were in I would say, you're comparing June, some of the worst of just what do we do in this whole COVID-19 pandemic outbreak.
It's nice to see those numbers and that sentiment or feeling start to continue to increase, but also get back more toward what we're used to talking about and looking at.
Yeah, I hope we all realize that. I think it's good for that growth. It likely slows from what are some pretty nice numbers as we continue to march through time here and get maybe back to what's more normal, at least.
That's it for us this week. I'm going to give you a break and let you have an easy week for you. We have a big week ahead of us next week as we look ahead to those reports, a little bit of everything.
That's right. Cold storage, hogs and pigs, livestock slaughter, cattle on feed. I said it's the quadfecta next week of reports for us, Megan.
It's a grand slam, Scott.
There you go.
Baseball.
I'm too slow this weekend, this week. I can't get to the baseball side.
All right. You have a great weekend. Hope you get some rainfall. For those of you who have been without rainfall, I hope you start to get some too. It's been in our neck of the woods. It's been hot. It's been dry, and we are definitely in need of a rain. And I know we're not the only ones.
For sure, boy. Let's get some of these folks with some rainfall. It's sure a tough time out there.
Scott, great to see you. We will see you again next Friday.
Sounds good, Megan.
Our weekly livestock market update delivered your email box every Saturday morning. Go to brownfieldagnews.com. You can submit questions and comments there as well. And if you're looking for some great podcast while you're in the cab of the tractor or you're on the road, go to brownfieldagnews.com/podcast. Have a great weekend. I'm Megan Grebner for Brownfield.